Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me. So I lead one of the global RevOps and technology teams, and specifically focused on revenue automation, enablement, tooling. And so we serve largely the revenue organization, but by extension, a good portion of Shopify. So there's thousands of folks that we're responsible for from a technology side, and it's both thrilling and challenging at the same time. So. Yeah.
I can imagine. So on a weekly basis, I'm sure you're using Fellow for some of your meetings. What are some of those meetings that you're currently using the tool for?
Yeah, so most of my day, which I think some people would probably cringe at this, but most of my day is meetings actually. And I believe that it is productive because it's about coordinating, it's about organizing, it's about helping set direction and what the wider team is doing. And so I use Fellow in most of my meetings, and I would say it's used in two distinct manners. One manner is when we have larger group meetings, we'll use it as kind of a running conversation or running agenda to help, give people the opportunity to add topics, comment on things, add different points to it. And so that's really great. I think you see some traditional folks may use that as having a running Google Doc or something on the side. And what's not great about that, of course, is that it's on a separate page here. And so you have that in the meeting with you. I use the Chrome extension, and I absolutely love that. The second one, which is most beneficial for me, is that I find when I'm meeting with multiple people or having multiple conversations or back-to-backs, usually the folks that I'm meeting on the team that have a purpose or a thing that they want me to do or need me to provide feedback on, they pop those notes in early. I go into my Google Calendar as I look throughout my day and click on, okay, there's notes here, notes here, notes here. If there aren't notes for particular meetings, I can do a quick little ping over and say, hey, can you add in some of the topics we want to talk about? So we'll be prepped. But then when I come in there, I'm methodical about finishing lists. So you have all these different talking points, and it's so easy in my head to say here's everything you want to talk about today. So we're going to make sure we have time to get through all these things and spend the right amount of allocation on that. And then the great thing about that is, we can punt it to the next meeting, or we can add additional action items off of that. And so as far as an organizational standpoint, I can't imagine being as busy as I am, or as anybody like me, or even busier, without having something like that. And I think traditionally you're looking at a combination of Google Docs and Evernotes and reminders on your phone. And so the reality is you do this with Fellow, it's all in one really nice place, and the integration is just unmatched. So that to me is kind of it's one of those key tools that are a key part of my life every day.
That's awesome to hear. And for those meetings, is there any of them where you have created a personal template or a structure that you like to follow every week?
So it's funny, I haven't done that, but I have folks on my team that like to keep me organized, and they have in fact done that. And so that's definitely something that we do use for a few of those. So I think some of the times too, and it sucks that it's not natural as much, but we put in different places to say celebrations, and it's a key thing to say, okay, reminder to what have we shipped, what have we done, what do we need to acknowledge, what do we need to celebrate from that. And so that I think is good to have it in there, take a breath, and ensure that you're having those conversations.
Yes. So the celebration section, is that on your weekly team meeting agenda? Is that a weekly team meeting?
Yeah.
What are other additions or sections that your team has added to that weekly recurring team meeting?
That's the main one for us, because everything else is relatively ad hoc. That's kind of how we would go back through that. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think that's the main piece. So yeah.
And what about your one-on-ones? Do you have a lot of one-on-ones, and do people like to create their own templates for those, or it's more they add their own talking points?
Yeah. For the one-on-ones, it's not to say you never know what you're going to come into, but you encourage fill the thing up with things you want to talk about, and often there's link outs to different documents or different things to look at, and so having that all in one place. In fact, I work with some of my colleagues too that we when you're in a conversation and you go to share a document, and so it's very easy, and I refer to this from a Google meeting perspective, not from Zoom. We use Google Meets at Shopify. You just post the link to the doc in the Google chat. And the difficulty is once the chat's gone,
It gets
gone.
lost. Yes.
So you could go into Slack and send it, but then again, you're like, if you don't have it open, it's a pain. So there's a lot of colleagues that I have is like, people will send them something on the Meets chat, and they're like, no, like link it in Fellow. And so then at least it's like, okay, I can go back. I know this happened. I know exactly where it is. So everybody defaults to that. So that's really good.
I love that example because we like to see that Fellow becomes like the decision log or the just like the log for all your meetings. And I think the documents that you discuss and the things that you even like when you're sharing your screen and everything like that during meetings, it's really good to link them in Fellow. So that's a great example.
Yeah, for sure. And then again, slightly outside of this too, from a one-on-one perspective as well, the getting feedback using Fellow for like the feedback and the survey questions that we send out. Absolutely love that one. And that we've started to use quite a bit because it's really, I think, managers wait until kind of the 11th hour here to like, oh, what did they do? What went really well? And so by doing this and getting really like thoughtful with it, and so Shopify uses, I think, a pretty basic template. I've gone in and done my own thing because I like asking different questions with it, but making sure that goes out relatively often and regular, I think is really important then, because when it comes time to do performance reviews, you've got like really great feedback, and then from someone to give the feedback, it's easy. It's right there. It's connected into Slack. The fellow pops up with like, answer it in here, like really straightforward. So
as a manager, Craig, how often are you sending these feedback requests, and what are some of the questions in the form, if you remember?
Yeah, so I do it at least once a quarter for my direct reports, and I think like some of the main questions that I'll have is like, one will be, and actually Shopify wide one, it's like, what's your trust battery with this person? And so that's a big thing at Shopify, but the perspective being is like, are you building that trust battery up? Can I see that change over time? Are they doing things that showcase that they're reliable and responsible and that you look to them to deliver? Or is there scenarios where like, oh, maybe we missed the ball on this? I like to do a combination of questions that are kind of more on a Likert scale. So like, again, 1 through 5, but also some really good scenarios where, it's as simple as like sending someone a Slack message and saying, hey, what did you work on recently? And like, how did they benefit you, or how did they add value to Shopify by doing it through Fellow? I asked that same question, like, what's the most recent thing you worked on? And again, what value did this person add? And so you hear it right from the horse's mouth, so to say, is like, okay, they worked on this, here's the value, this is why this is beneficial for Shopify, boom, in the performance report. So it's like, it's really straightforward and actually very human, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then you have it documented like right within your one-on-one notes, where you'll also be taking notes for your performance reviews.
Yes.
That's exactly a good tip.